You must remember this, a kiss is still a kiss.
Hello everyone, Anita here and welcome to another video. Today we are painting on leaves. I'm so excited about this because I've had these leaves prepared since last year. I completely forgot about them. They've been drying in between the pages of an old book, and I just remembered about them a few weeks ago. And I thought, what a perfect coincidence. I'm just about to start my YouTube channel again. And it's fall. You know, what better time to use, leaves as a background for painting? So, there it is, I have a little collection of leaves there. I also have my other ingredients prepared. So I will be painting with acrylic gouache today. I have my paintbrushes. I have those 2 cups of water. Rest assured, little disclaimer, these are already gone. I don't know what I was thinking. I've just ruined the painting using those 2 little cups. So they're gone. Okay, I have glass jars now. I'm also using one of those removable palette thingies, just basically waxed paper in a palette form. And here I'm already jumping into the painting process. The idea for this painting is very simple. It's just a pumpkin patch. But I wanted to put it in a special setting. I have a special frame for it, which is a bit of a 3D shadow box, and I have all different little things that I would like to put with those leaves inside that frame. We'll see that a bit later. But if you're not familiar with acrylic gouache, it's not technically gouache. It's a bit of a mix between gouache and acrylic paint. This paint behaves and looks exactly like gouache, so you can dilute it with water. But when it dries, it dries. It doesn't go anywhere like acrylic paint. But it dries matte. So it doesn't have any sheen on it. It's just completely matte like gouache would. It's really beautiful paint. I was very fortunate to get some and to buy some. And I'm so happy to use it every time I have an opportunity for it. And this was a perfect opportunity. So here I am blocking out basic shapes. I'm working from back towards the front. So first of all, I'm blocking out the background, and the background consists of 3 layers, which is the sky and then 2 layers of fields with pumpkins on them. So it's a pumpkin patch painting, obviously. You've seen that already by the title. So for now, I wasn't sure what colors I wanted to use. Of course, the pumpkins are really bright orange. So it was kind of obvious to me to use a mix of blues and greens to kind of bring out that beautiful orange color. And so I've decided to make this night scene, also, to incorporate maybe some glow later on. I've started with a very, very dark sky. And then I mixed that blue that I used on the sky with a little bit of green, and I started bringing it up to the front. So I'm just mixing more and more green to the blue and just blocking out the basic shapes. It took quite a long time for that first layer to dry. Maybe because I was using way too much water. I'm used to using a lot of water with my paint. Even when I'm painting with acrylic paint, I'm just using a lot of water. It's almost, I like transparency in paint. But of course here it's not exactly what you want. I didn't want that leaf color to shine through. I wanted it only at the edges. So I had to actually paint the background twice for it to be completely opaque. But after I've done that, every single layer on that was opaque. It just, I don't know if it was just a little bit kind of sleek texture of the leaf. But once I had a feeling that the paint was kind of sliding off of it, even though it wasn't. It's a really good background for painting. But I had a feeling that after that first layer of paint, the paint was sticking way better than to the leaf itself. So here I'm putting another layer and just kind of adding a gradient, I suppose, a very rough one. I'm trying to be very loose with my paintings lately to begin with. But in this case, I wanted to have a bit of a rougher texture. I mean, you have to remember that this is covered with foliage. These fields are filled with pumpkins. Pumpkins have big leaves. There will be a lot of variation. And of course, these are really, really tiny leaves. So I couldn't go in too much detail, which is good. But as you can see, it just adds a little bit of texture. And I'm still concentrating on those 3 layers. So I'm trying to bring out the feeling that they are fields, that they have, there's shading. One thing I wasn't very happy with are these clouds. Now, this is something this is actually mist and not clouds. This is something I love to do. I love to do misty effects in my paintings. However, as I've mentioned before, this is not the ideal background for adding water. And even though the paint was sticking much better to the layer of paint underneath rather than the leaf, it still dried very not as smooth as I would like it to be. Now, I like this effect, don't get me wrong. I actually really like the kind of grainy, almost like an ultramarine effect to me. It looked like that. It brings out the little vines underneath, the leaf veins, sorry. But it wasn't as transparent and as delicate and mysterious as I would like it to be, ideally. So now I'm adding a few stars here and there, nothing very fancy, but I really thought that I like to bring very bright things on top of very dark things, and just that sky was asking for it. It was asking to be covered in clouds. And while I'm painting this, normally in a watercolor painting, I would first draw the background and then add the white layers on top. But in the case of gouache, and this kind of medium in general, I'm working from the back towards the front. So as you can see, I'm working from the furthest layer, moving now to the middle, towards the middle pumpkin patch, and you will later see me moving even more to the front. So I painted the sky, I painted the mist in the back, and now I'm moving on to the pumpkins. So I wanted them to be, of course, that you could see that they're pumpkins, but they are way further in the back. So I didn't want to make it too detailed. So of course, the first thing I did was just to block the basic shapes of pumpkins, and normally pumpkins don't really lay like this on the field, so perfectly, upright and looking just exactly like pumpkins. But for the sake of this painting, I'm not really interested in how it looks in reality. This is my pumpkin patch when everything is perfect and they're all just laying there, upright. But still, I didn't want the pumpkins themselves to be too bright. So I started actually with a brown color as a base and added just a tiny little bit of orange to that brown for the detail. And then I just came in with a little bit brighter orange to add a little bit of definition to the pumpkins that were in the front. As you can see, there is a really clear distinction where the pumpkins are. And then I started adding a little bit of groundwork to those pumpkins. I mean, those pumpkins need to have, they look like they're floating right now. You need to add a little bit of shadows, even if it's night, and a little bit of extra foliage. So I just, I've diluted a mixture, and there's actually quite a lot of water in that mixture. I've diluted a mixture of black and green. And yes, black. And I've just started scribbling around, trying to imagine that those pumpkins are covered in leaves, but without actually drawing leaves. They're just, they're just scribbles. They're just, I'm making beds for them. And at some point I've realized that I'm painting on those leaves as if they are separate, but those leaves are actually creating one bigger picture. So I have to make sure that the ground is, let's say, tilted all in one direction, because at some point it looked like they were all of those pumpkins were tilted a little bit, and it looked weird. So I just started to add a little bit more of the foliage, kind of trying to even it out. And luckily it was only this last layer, because the next layer is a bit more separate. So there's things happening on both leaves that do not have to be so aligned. And the more I'm adding little details, the more the picture starts to be alive. I'm at this point I was already extremely happy with it. I was still very nervous, as I've mentioned before in the update video and on Facebook, and I have problems with paintings. Paintings do not come out the way I want them to. And even though I seem to be coming back, around, just things are getting better, I still have a problem. It's just still, very, very nerve-wracking for me. It's, here I am, I'm painting for YouTube again, and what if I'm just going to mess it up? The good thing is that I know you guys are very, very understanding, and even if I messed it up, you would still watch it, and it wouldn't be a big problem. So that kind of keeps keeps my nerves together. In the meantime, here I'm adding another layer of mist, still very, very opaque. But when I tried adding more water to it, it just didn't work out the way I wanted to. It didn't want to. There was just too much water, even though I've added just a little bit. There was this very fine line between what it showed and what didn't show. So yeah, it is what it is. I don't hate it. I really like this painting. It's a very simple painting. It's just a lot of scribbling, but I like it. It's very I can't pronounce it. Therapeutic? Goodness. Pronunciation problems today. So as you can see, what I've mentioned before, these two leaves now, I put away the third one because I didn't need it anymore. I was finished with it. So these two leaves are now just separate. They don't need to be together for them to, I'm just basically painting separately on each of them. And my camera had a little bit of a problem with recording, so there's a little bit of jump there, but nothing much happened, as you can see. So I'm just adding once again, the same thing as on the layer above. I blocked the basic shape, and now I just keep adding brighter colors and darker colors, just pushing and pulling the values, just trying to make the pumpkin interesting, a bit rough, just looking like a pumpkin, but without it to be, I don't paint realistically, so it was just, I was adding color until I was satisfied with how detailed it looked. It had to have a level of detail that was higher than the level above them, that layer of pumpkins in the back, so that the idea that there is a distance between those two fields would be even bigger. And so you can see me, I'm just scribbling. I'm literally scribbling, and I'm using the least water possible, because I really like that kind of dried brush effect. It adds a lot of detail to the pumpkin, because if you look at pumpkins, they have that kind of grittiness to them. Not all of them, of course, but a lot have that grittiness, and I wanted to achieve that effect with dry brushing. So I've added a few leaves in the back of the bigger pumpkin. I will do the same to the other pumpkins, I think, or just scribbles. Scribbles. There's scribbles all the way. The scribbling is fun, I have to say. But in the end, I've decided that the colors I'm using are quite, they dry much duller than they look wet. That's another thing about acrylic gouache, that the paint looks much, much more vibrant when it's wet. And so I've added a little bit darker, a little bit more black and a little bit more blue to the mixture, just to darken it. And I just kept adding until I was satisfied. This whole process here is just adding and adding in the same manner. As you can see here, I made a little jump because I really needed to put my nose in the painting just to get the details right. And basically I've just bumped up the contrast. So the orangeness of the pumpkin is much more visible against the dark leaves. And I didn't go into detail of the leaves. I was very satisfied with the shape itself, just without nothing else. And if you notice really clearly, I'm just using a dry brush right now and just trying to dry brush the paint. And it really creates that very neat, a little bit, rustic, just effect, like grungy, I don't know. And I really wanted, you know how I am with my little shinies and little fireflies. Now, I don't know if fireflies would be there, but this is a magical field, okay? This is a magical pumpkin field. I'm pretty sure the pumpkin from this field was in Cinderella. So I don't know, at some point I just really wanted to use a bright green color. And I figured that adding little shiny fireflies would be the perfect use for that color. And I was so extremely pleased with that decision. It just made everything so much more magical. And you can see me adding here the first layer of the fireflies. And then in the meantime, while that dries, I'm adding some extra color to the pumpkin. At this point, I was very happy with the pumpkins. They looked much more detailed than the ones on the further field. So then I'm adding another layer of green to the firefly, just bringing up that little shine, the shiny effect. And I'm also adding a little bit of extra of the green shine on the pumpkins. Not much. I didn't want the pumpkins to be too green. I mean, I still prefer white highlight. And here it comes. And this, when I've added the white highlight on top of the green, I was just, I was so happy. It looked so magical. What can I say? I just like my white highlight. So I'm just adding here. I'm smudging sometimes with my finger if I'm not happy with something. Just because the whole picture is a little bit smudged. The texture is very rough. So I can smudge it with my finger if I don't like it and then cover it with an extra layer of paint. So here I'm assembling the picture together. As you can see, I have this shadow box that I found in a secondhand store. It was this, I think someone had a little seaside scene inside it because there was plenty of sand in it, and it had little decoupage pieces on the front that I've taken out with a lot of trouble because I really like the crackle effect that this picture frame had. Didn't want to sand it, so I had to cover it with lots and lots and lots of thin layers of paint to still have some of that crackle left. And now I'm using a foam tape with different layers. You can see it's pretty thick. I think I had 5 layers here for the highest leaf. Actually, you can see the tape a little bit here, but trust me, you can see it in the finished painting. That's a weird camera angle. So I had, I think, for the topmost, is that how you say it? The leaf, I had 5 layers of just foam tape stuck together. And then I wanted to finish this painting with some just things I found in the forest. I tend to scavenge in the forest a lot. And recently there was my head is in the shot. There was the perfect weather to go and scavenge. And I found these little pine cones and I loved them so much. And I thought they were perfect for this painting. So I'm just adding them wherever I feel, is necessary. My sketch actually I had different things in the sketch initially. I had the mug of steaming tea and I had a little lantern, but I felt like this was just way too much. I wanted the painting, the leaves, to be the focal point of this. I thought that if I've added even more details, it would be just way too much, and the leaves would be, almost suffocated by all the extra detail. Pine cones were enough. But at that point, I figured that I really would like to have more of those little shiny firefly thingies. And I wanted to paste them in different places inside the picture frame. So I've kind of got the idea that I could paint them on top of a clear plastic sheet, and I've used just a plastic sleeve. One of the thicker ones, you get the thinner and thicker. This is the clear, really clear plastic sleeve. And so I started painting I've never painted actually on the plastic sleeve before, so it was a bit of experiment. But I was, layering the paint and trying to get, as you can see here, I've decided, maybe it's actually good, my background in the picture frame is black, so perhaps I should actually paint it in a bit darker background so that I can see how it will look like in the finished picture frame. And I've been just layering paint. I've painted much more than I probably needed. I used, I think, 5 in the end, because it's always better to have a bit more of it than you will use, just to have a lot to choose from. And as you can see here, I'm just starting once again with that same grass green, I think it's spring green, just this light green color. And then I'm layering with a little bit of lemon yellow, just mixing it, just trying to build up that intensity and the layered shiny effect. Because these were quite much bigger than the ones in the painting, because they were supposed to be closer, of course. So they needed to be also a little bit more detailed. I had a bit of a problem painting on top of the plastic sheets, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, this is acrylic gouache. It's meant to stick to weird places that you would normally not have, used gouache on. And also the good part about it is that it dries. It doesn't wash off. You can still scrape it off, because it's still plastic, but it's not as bad. Now, I have a feeling here that I've missed quite a bit of footage, but I can't find it, because I've actually, as you can see here, I've prepared little foam stacks for these guys. From the same foam I used under the leaves, just that I made it very thin. I stacked it quite a few times. I think some of them are 10 little pieces high, and then I've covered them in black ink, just so that you wouldn't see them. And I was really, really happy with how it turned out. Here you can see the final effect. It was actually very hard for me to film it properly. I don't know why, but probably because the contrast between the pieces was so big. Here I kind of wanted to show you how it looked like from the side. You can barely see the black foam pieces on top of the black background. It was a very, very good match. And the total effect is so magical. It's like really peeking into this magical window and just, getting into a pumpkin patch to pick up some pumpkins. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps a lot, to let me know that you've enjoyed these kind of videos. And thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!